afternoon to you, Jess. Good afternoon, everybody. And we're looking forward now to the second instalment of supercar action on the track this afternoon. Another 30-minute session, Century Batteries Ipswich SuperSprint Queensland Raceway. It's event 9 of the Virgin Australia Supercars Championship. As you quite rightly pointed out, it contributes greatly to the story to come for the Armour All qualifying sessions tomorrow, of which there will be 3 portions of it leading into race 19, the Saturday 120-kilometre race. And then on Sunday, we'll go through the same process after a practice 4 Sunday morning. 3 portions of qualifying and then moving into the 200-kilometre race into the afternoon. Chaz Mostert on screen, one of the very successful drivers at Queensland Raceway. Some drivers just click with this place and they've been able to come up with a setting and a setup that works for them, and other drivers have difficulty. So, for example, while Chaz has had poles and he's had victories here, David Reynolds has not been able to achieve that. He's not been able to achieve a podium. Jamie Whincup has. One of the interesting things about the Whincup stats when you look at his performances here, it's actually been a little while between drinks for Jamie. He's had some decent spot performances along the way, but victories and poles have been a little more distant for him as the circuit now is open for business, and we've got 30 minutes to run. Cars rolling out there. We've got a gentle northerly breeze according to the Bureau information that I'm getting at the moment, and we're just over or just under 23 degrees in fact, and cloud cover's coming and going at the moment, and as Mark and Craig and Jess were discussing just a few moments ago, that could have a very big impact on the way in which things unfold. Details for our track now. Virgin Australia information, 3.1 kilometres around this racetrack. The practice record, ironically, is owned by Tim Slade. He did that back in 2017. Average speed's about 164 kilometres an hour, just over the old 100 mile an hour mark. And let's have a look at the graphical detail around this. So there's a big bump on the run into turn 1. Cars are turning there for 5 to 6 odd seconds through turn 1. Very different shaped corner through turn 2, but about the same kind of speed. And then 250 kilometres an hour is the peak speed on the run to turn 3, where again there's some bumpiness in the braking area there. And through the right-hander at 3, spend about 7 or 8 seconds turning there. Passing area on the run into turn 4. Turn 5, not really a passing opportunity, but it's very line specific. And then there is a passing opportunity into the final corner at 6. It's second gear, 80 kilometres an hour. And that is a lap. Sectors are important. We'll make reference to those through the session. There's the breeze. It's kind of coming and going a little bit at the moment, a bit variable out there. They keep a very close eye on that in the race teams because they've all got their own little weather stations set up on the transporters so that they can make sure that they factor the temperature, the pressure and the cloud cover together with the humidity into the performance of the car so that they're not misled by the ambient conditions. Armour All pole last time out on Sunday for this young man, for Cam Waters, for the Monster Energy Ford Mustang for Tickford. Great to see him be able to string that together. In fact, it was a bit different in Townsville for those drivers that were able to generate a pole position. Some different names, which is great to see. So looking back at our previous session, which Jess and the boys have just gone through in detail and discussed the form guide as to who's done what. Ultimately, it was Scott McLaughlin who was able to get the job done. We saw a mistake at turn 4 by Jamie Whincup in that practice session a bit earlier on. Very easy to overstep the mark at this racetrack. One of the things that drivers are compelled to do is to find all of their lap speed as much as they can under brakes into turn 1, into turn 3, into turn 4, into turn 6. So you're trying to find the last millimetre all the time. Very big brake pressures, very big brake temperatures at this racetrack. So therefore, there's a lot of little mistakes, particularly when you're in the rehearsal phase, which is exactly what practice is. Tim Slade off the road here for Freightliner Racing. So McLaughlin did a 9.1 in the last session. Davison did a 9.3. There was potentially a bit of traffic involved in that at the back end of the run. Jamie Whincup was 3rd fastest on screen a moment ago. Back into the commentary box, joining me once again, Mark Scaife. And as you were just walking through the door, getting the replay of what happened to Tim Slade, he's just done exactly what I was describing. He's trying to find that last millimetre down there, Scaife. Pretty easy to outbrake yourself. And you've been through it here many, many times. You've had a couple of race wins at this place. You're trying to chase that perfection under brakes. You're looking for the last millimetre. Once you do, it's a characteristic of the car and the tyre. Once you do lock a brake with these cars, trying to unlock, stop and still turn, it's a challenge.
Certainly is, Neil. Good afternoon. It's one of those places, if there's a racetrack in Australia that's very much braking dependent, that's the technique of the driver in accordance with how efficient the braking system and how well the car stops. this is it. So Symmons Plains in Tasmania, Barbagallo Raceway in WA. This one in southeast Queensland is very dependent upon brake performance. And it's a place that has got its own little nuances because a lot of the braking areas have actually got bumps in them. This one here, right in front of Cam Waters there, is a pretty big bump in the braking phase and turn-in phase for turn 1. There's then quite a big bump in the middle of turn 2. Then there's quite a big rise and a upward style rounded bump right in the middle of the braking area at turn 3 as we watch Nick Percat just dribble the left-hand rear wheels off onto the left-hand side. And it's a place that not only is characterised by how efficient the stopping needs to be, but it's also about your brake modulation and your technique. There's a lot of driver technique that comes into play at this venue.
Different livery on that car, by the way, for Nick Percat this weekend, which has been part of the story for those guys through the season. And Hare and Forbes on the car as you look at Simona Di Silvestro, car number 78.
Who was very strong in the first sector in the previous session. In practice 1, she was almost as fast as McLaughlin, who was fastest. That's a massive lock-up for Macaulay Jones. That will have hurt that right-hand front tyre. And it was sort of induced with that little bump in the middle of the braking area that I spoke of. He had a fair lock-up going, and this is this great image. Right out sideways for Dave Reynolds. Beautiful car control. Not too much at the curb. That looks great. It's slow. It's a bit Parramatta Speedway-ish, but it's beautiful car control exhibited there by Dave. And we often talk about his technique and his beautiful style. And that's a great example of car control at about 100 miles an hour, about 160 kilometres an hour, right out sideways, gathered it up, beautifully executed. He'll go back and say, I've got too much oversteer, Alistair. That's what he'll say at the end of that. That'll be the comment.
Well, and that's very track location specific as to where you might apply that remark too, because it won't necessarily be everywhere. That's probably exactly what he's doing right now. How do you lip read when they've got a helmet in front of those lips, Mark? That's a great skill that you've generated over the years.
Am I worth? Well, it works.
We shouldn't really eavesdrop.
No.
So no podium, no pole. However, 3 fourth placings for David Reynolds at this place. Last year, he strung together a couple of 7th places.
You know what I love about you is we probably shouldn't, but we will.
Yeah. And we'd like to do more of it. You would have been an absolute shocker. In fact, you know, when I'd stopped and you were still racing, you get within about 10 metres of the danger zone. You know that sticker on the side of the jet aeroplane engines that said the blast area, don't stand anywhere near it? That was what happened when you got near Scaife when he was talking technical, and you might have found out the ride height of his car or his spring setting or something. Stay away from the blast area.
All right, let's move it on.
Tim Slade, already done some venturing out into the dust here at the moment. It's pretty dry, the conditions around here at the moment. Some tough conditions being experienced in this portion of Queensland. Up further north earlier in the year, incredibly wet. This young man on screen, Anton De Pasquale, having re-signed his deal. That's great news for him, gives him continuity, settle things down. I asked him point blank on trackside yesterday, did you have other options? And he answered yes.
Yeah.
So he was shopping around. There was a bit of chat. Paul Morris has been helping him with his career. But I think it's a logical decision. Shout out also to Barry Ryan, who's not here this weekend. He's been back in the workshop for new bearings and rings, or I think ankle surgery. So he had some ligament damage, I know. So he'll be watching this on television, probably throwing things at it right now. It was a debut for him last year here, Anton De Pasquale. Ended up down in 26th and 16th. And found a couple of placings at the last event. Betty's here, and she's keeping an eye on operations. So he's moved up to 11th in the championship after Townsville. Good strong run, but there's been some very impressive performances, and I'm pleased. I think one of the things that was heartening, many times you and I wander in and out of the garage to talk about drivers, cars, conditions, all sorts of different things, and as this team's floated along very well this year, many times I've walked in there and I've said, oh, how did you achieve that? And they'll go, Anton. You know, they've done a great job on that side of the garage with car number 99. David recognises it and says it, so does Alistair. And I think that's a great thing. There's obviously great harmony there. Mirka De Rosa, who's the engineer for Anton, they're all contributing to the outcomes. So it's nice to see that harmony. I think continuity will serve them well in the next 12 or so months.
Totally agree. And that bit of competition between a young Turk like Anton and someone who's genuinely experienced and's got a score sheet like David is healthy for everybody. As Anton has gone to the top on the previous lap, he's done a 9.28 compared to McLaughlin with a 9.32 and Van Gisbergen with a 9.37. Now, this will be very specific to the amount of cloud cover, and teams will chase this. So as soon as there's a little bit of a drop in UV, you'll see people put tyres on, because remember, this is practice 2, but in our world we call it qualifying 0. Faster again for Anton with a 9.19.
He was quite good. The cars balanced pretty decent. Turn 1+1, and then the cars that have bounced up after that. Probably.
Good explanation there by Anton about the balance of the car, and good feedback. Nice, concise comments, not too much chat. Had a really good chat with Will Davison, and they made a pact to not chase the understeer at turn 1 and turn 2 because it's very much day dependent and track dependent. He's just gone up to position 2 with a 9.27. He got slightly caught at the end of that session before and practice 1 with Mark Winterbottom. Didn't really cost him very much, but he did a 9.32, and he's overall quite happy with the car. There's Ludo Lacroix looking on. Here's a young charger, young bloke called Scott McLaughlin, who's been reasonably fast this year, young now.
Converted his speed into 11 poles for Amaral and 13 race victories so far. Picked up the win on Saturday at Townsville. He has done rather well, hasn't he? So he's just gone to the top now. That's actually better than the time he did earlier in the day as well. 1 minute 9.07 for McLaughlin over Di Pasquale, who's back in the garage. We go back and find the Nissan car number 7, Andre Heimgartner, and he's on target for an improvement on this lap. He's down in 14th at the moment, and he's a couple of tenths away in the first sector, and in fact, and in the second sector as well. The last sector of the racetrack that we reference our timing, it's pretty short and sharp. It really only deals with getting into and out of the final corner. So where did he end up on that lap, Andre? He was actually gone nowhere. He stayed in the same spot. In fact, he was just a tiny bit slower than his best time. This is Mark Winterbottom on screen. He's just jumped up 14 spots into 7th. And as we migrate closer to the end of this session, you'll see more and more little mini rehearsals, better set of tyres going on before everybody finally settles on the last roll of the dice, and then they'll have decent tyres on. And they've got a decent bank of Dunlop soft tyres this weekend, so they've got 28 of those to choose from, 7 sets.
And universally, the drivers are saying that the only 2 spots you can use more of the exit curb is turn 2 because it actually runs longer. It's not because it's wider. That's a great shot.
What's Kevy up to there?
Kevin Fitzsimmons. It's a little historic shot. I'm not sure where it was. There's Ludo giving some instruction of some changes. So yes, turn 2 exit and turn 5 exit are the only 2 curbs that you can use more of for longer. So you can't go any wider, they're just longer.
And is that because of the sawtooth and the disturbance to the behaviour of the car?
Yep.
And then you've got to scramble back onto the racetrack, so you could argue that the arc doesn't serve you well. Sometimes it's adding a few extra millimetres to the racetrack length.
That's right.
Love this shot, Cam Waters in the footwell of the Monster Energy Tickford racing car. Now, we watched him down at turn 2. Mark and I were in an engaged discussion in the previous session about the tricks of turn 2. This is the run into 1. 2's, it's a temptress. It asks you all the time, grab the throttle, grab the throttle, grab the throttle, and you grab it and you go, shouldn't have done that. So let's just see what happens here. He picks up the throttle on the run into 2. You trail the brake a lot into 2. Progress, progress, progress. Yeah, that's what he's looking for. One solid progression to 100% throttle through turn 2. So they potentially have made some gains there. He rolled out of the throttle pretty early going into turn 3 that time. Oh, Shane Van Gisbergen off the road at turn 4.
That's where his teammate was off the road in the previous session also. Is there a little wind direction change since then? There's been a little bit of a change through the course of the day. It was a very mild wind condition in the first session. That locked the rears very early there, and Shane just decided to run the car straight. If he turned it in, it was a big chance to spin. Here we go, on board, have a listen. So you can hear those rear wheels and the drive line we call backlash, which is basically all the intermeshing of the gears and drivetrain as they lock and unlock. And there's a little bump in that braking phase that does tend to upset the car also. And they use a section of apron on the right-hand side, which is a little short course piece of tar on the right-hand side that you're actually out past the white line on the right. It gives you a little bit easier turn-in position for the car. So it's not just about the vehicle position, it's about the trajectory of the car on the way to the corner. So Shane, who was very fast immediately, he did a 9.37 straight away. He was second fastest off the bat. So that car doesn't seem like it's too bad. David Reynolds has come up with a 9.35. Chas Mostert now with a 9.25. So McLaughlin, De Pasquale, Mostert, Davison, Reynolds. That's your top 5.
And Hazelwood was just outside the top 10 on screen here at the moment in that previous session. Back to Reynolds. Hazelwood at the moment's down in 15th position. And Reynolds, who I don't think votes this as one of his favourite tracks, is sitting in 5th. He's just about to finish that lap. And that was just a whisker slower.
Last corner. And turn 1.
Alistair McVeigh just looking at the micro sectors.
On turn 1. Yeah.
That's code for I'm not happy at turn 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge, this place. Got a great finishing record, which we picked up in some of the data leading into this race weekend. David Reynolds, he's actually on a bit of a streak of finishing at the moment, despite getting tangled up at Townsville. He's brought home 52 consecutive race finishes in the Virgin Australia Supercars Championship. His teammate, Anton De Pasquale, actually starts his 50th race this Sunday. There's a few key milestones to keep an eye out for this weekend, because up in Townsville, Shane Van Gisbergen ended up recording the 500th Holden Commodore victory, which was pretty impressive, but he's on 99 podiums as well, and that was detailed a little bit earlier in the coverage. So a couple of pretty impressive runs. I'm curious to see how this young man goes this weekend. You were talking about him just prior to us coming on with this session, about the fact that he's a Dunlop Super 2 champion, about the fact that they tested here last week. It's a pretty important round for him. He's got a bit of a battle going. I mean, every single driver out there is always fighting for their survival. Even at the best of times, you're only as good as your last result and hang on by your fingernails, but he's just trying to make sure he has a position in the field for next season. Oh, that was a lot of that exit space that you just talked about. There's a little hole starting to drill out down there on the exit of turn 1, isn't there?
It certainly is. That's that little extension there on the end of that. That's the piece that all the guys have been saying, oh, I can definitely use that. Watch this.
See the hole?
That's too wide. And he will have not aimed for there. He would have aimed for about a 300 or 400 mil narrower exit, and that hole is savage.
Digging out.
It's amazing when you give drivers more road, they just tend to use it.
It's half of the course. That's a good shot also. It just shows the behaviour of the car through turn 4. And one of the other things, there was the rearward shot that I saw earlier in the coverage today through 2. And it really illustrates how much diagonal loads in the car and how much you trail the brake into 2, waiting for the nose, waiting for the nose, waiting for the nose before you transition back to the throttle pedal. This is the run down the pit straight, and then 1, and then this next bit that we're talking about, running into 2. Real setup challenge for these cars. They're bouncing a lot through turn 1 this weekend as well.
9.11 that lap. So that's the same tyres. He did a 9.07 earlier and a 9.11 now. That bit of bounce that Neil's just referring to often comes from the amount of sway bar or anti-roll bar that the cars use, and the drivers like to have a lot of sway bar on the car and minimise the roll, but over one-wheel bumps like at turn 1 and turn 2 tends to make the car pitch and buck, and that's the vehicle dynamic that Neil was just talking about.
Lee Holdsworth's on a good lap here at the moment. Personal best sectors 1 and 2. He's sitting in 14th. This should bump him up the order a little bit. We've got just over 11 minutes remaining in the session. And did bump him up 9 spots into 5th. He's done a 9.3. Back to Will Davison, who's tucked in behind one of the Shell V-Power racing cars at the moment. He's about to complete another lap. Will sitting in 4th at the moment. Personal best sector 1. No improvement in position, but the time was oh so close to what he previously achieved, so very consistent. He just did a 9.3 on the lap that we were watching. Meantime, Holdsworth actually going on with a great lap here. and his best was a 9.2, Will Davison. So Lee Holdsworth, who we just watched a few moments ago, his first sector is better than anybody else's, so he's going to be on a pretty decent tie to do that. We've grabbed him on the run into turn 4. Big pitch in the car as they run into 4, so a lot of longitudinal load, making sure that those two front tyres are as square as the driver can aim them up into 4, getting big brake pressures around this racetrack. Brake temperatures really soar around here. When you do the longer races, particularly on the Sunday 200k race, and once upon a time there was the Queensland 500, you really start to feel the fact that you're hooking hard into the brake pedal around here. What's the lap look like?
It's a little bit better. 100 was slower. He lost that at 1.5 tenths in the last sector there. It was quite good up to that point.
Now, you placed your bet a tenth of a second too early then.
Sorry, I did.
Cam Waters came up 2 spots into 8th position on that lap. Just be patient.
Okay, I will.
I know it's hard. Rick Kelly out of the final corner. He had it all sliding in the Nissan, the Castrol entry. He's just moved up 8 spots into 15th. It's also been a place that's been a puzzle for Rick over the years as well, just trying to find maximum performance here. Mostert's completing his lap, still sitting in 3rd. That was a 9.5 that lap. And those flags up on the top right, that wind has picked up.
Definitely.
Well done.
And that's the run, it's a tailwind into turn 4. So that'll be a little bit of the reasoning behind Shane van Gisbergen trying to get the car stopped there. This is young James Goldie. And remember that Richie Stanaway still is out with that neck injury, so our best wishes to Richie. And his replacement, super sub, is Michael Caruso,
who starts his 350th supercar race this Sunday. And the announcement made yesterday also that Stecky Brothers Racing going to run a wildcard at the Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000 in October. That'll also be supported by Boost Mobile, primary sponsor for Gary Rogers Motorsport, but the Steckys are running their own program, but with the same sponsor. And so that organisation headed by Peter Adderton, who's been a long-time investor in the sport, getting behind some young guys for Bathurst, which is pretty impressive. Speaking of young guys, Greg.
Oh, very kind of you, Crompo. Just into pit lane, and probably a bit hard to see with the camera we've got down here, but just watching the attitude of those cars. You can see it from the outside shot across looking at turn 1 when the cars go through turn 1 and the bumps that they're hitting, but from the back end of them, watching the cars go in there and watching the back of those cars, the amount that they are oscillating and moving around and staggering. It's hard to believe actually that any of the cars are making it through turn 1 at the speed that they're doing it. And also then I'm just keeping an eye on who's doing what, holding 5th gear or holding 6th gear. So there's a bit of a mix going on down here. Some are staying on the limiter. I think it was Reynolds that just went past and holding the limiter, but I noticed there's a few that are in 6th gear going in here as well. Shane van Gisbergen was one of them that's grabbing 6th gear going into turn 1. So yeah, in staggering speed. And the Penske car's holding 5th gear as well going in there. But watching them try to get through 1 and the fact they get through there is quite staggering.
Yeah, thanks for that, Greg. That would spook me, I reckon, grabbing an extra gear running into turn 1 down there. Well, that would spook me too, James Courtney.
That would really spook me.
And that was pretty wild. Gee, the thing had the big slide on here, didn't it? Actually, more of that started to generate late in the game. So the Mega Fuels entry, we saw the side of it, which you don't need to be looking at as it comes off turn 2. So that was not the fast way for James Courtney.
Here's McLaughlin on a ripping lap. This might actually get him into the 8s. Currently on a 9.07. Oh, he was battling to get that car in there.
He has it teetering right on. A lot of the shots when we jump on board and look over his shoulder, the car of Scott's is right on the nervous edge of getting away from him in the rear, and he's got it very loaded towards the nose on these laps, hasn't he?
He runs the narrow line there. See how close to the inside curb he is the whole way around. So he might have dropped a little bit of time at sector 2, and he goes an 8.98. So sorry, I was being bold, Neil, and thought he was going to stitch me out.
That was that extra 10.
Yeah.
Now, Will Davison's on a very good number here as well. Now, the mid-sector for McLaughlin was where he just lost a little bit of time. So just wonder whether when we caught him with that onboard shot where it was just on the gentle drift, was a worry. But an 8.9, new benchmark for the day for Scott McLaughlin. Di Pasquale still sitting in 2nd. And this may threaten even the McLaughlin number because Will Davison's done a better job in Sector 1 than anybody else. He's just done the best job in Sector 2. He's got to get through this final corner now. He runs up much higher than McLaughlin through 6. Kind of like the McLaughlin approach through 6 though, run it around the inside, and all the different arcs and edges tend not to work, but Davison has made his work. He's done an 8.94. He's 4/100ths quicker than Scott McLaughlin, but it's intriguing to watch all of the different variations through that last corner.
Nice lap.
Yeah, great lap. Anton Di Pasquale. So we're 5.5 minutes remaining now. It's going to get pretty lively in the back end of the session because the top 10 in this session get to completely clean jump armour or qualifying part 1 tomorrow. They buy a ride straight into the second portion of qualifying. Heimgartner's on screen. He's 18th at the moment. His personal best mid-sector might help him just shuffle up the order ever so slightly.
And just a quick one for the 17 guys. That was actually on his P2 practice tyres that he just did that time on. So he's got a brand new green set of Dunlop Sport Max soft tyres sitting here ready to go on that car.
It's bad news. I hope others up and down the pit lane didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's right. I hope they're not listening to you, Gene. Everyone's got a sad face going. Oh, a big lock-up for Percat. That was massively locked. And there is that bump in the braking area there that does tend to exaggerate the inside front wheel locking. So maybe that was brought on by that bump, but that will have hurt that right-hand front tyre for sure. Further
to my silly remark about the age of the tyres on McLaughlin's car, I've just been reliably informed that Davison's tyres were green. So he's got brand new tyres. He's done an 8.94. McLaughlin had something of a use. Must have been a good one though. But it wasn't good enough for an 8.98 with a little mistake in it where it just started to get away from him in the rear end of the car in the middle of the racetrack. Now that lap where we went down to Greg, Andre finished his lap and personal best for him, and he moved up into 12th position as a result of it.
He's going to go close to getting into the 10, Heimgartner. That lap then, before he decided to peel off, was definitely within the 10. So Davison, McLaughlin, Di Pasquale, Mostert, Holdsworth, Reynolds, Van Gisbergen, Waters, Coulthard, Whincup. Young Todd Hazelwood is 11th. Heimgartner's 12th. Now, of that group, there's a couple of people that you would think... Ooh, that was nasty, wasn't it? That was nasty, yeah.
There's a lot of nasty going on out there.
There is. I don't know why they play like that now, do you?
It's everyone just cycling up, trying to find temp and pressure and getting the brake temps up. But at the same time, while you're doing all that, you've got to keep one eye on the mirror. Very easy to tangle with others out there at the moment. Just David's initial move, where's he going?
Yeah.
Here we go. It's going to be happy hour at Queensland Raceway. Just outside, 3 minutes remaining now in practice 2. Beautiful conditions out there at the moment. Temporarily, I think the wind may have just dropped a bit, but the place is blazed in sunshine again. On board with Shane Van Gisbergen, who's also chasing the rear end into turn 4. Where's his splits? I'm just trying to see where he is. His first split was the best he's done personally, but about a 10th away from Will Davison and about a 10th away from Davison in the mid-sector as well. That looked fairly nervous in the rear end. They had a little delay earlier in the day, the gear position sensor feeding false data into the car and upsetting a whole bunch of readings.
Currently P3.22 to the fastest Davison. Yeah, a lot of people just exiting the pits now. Behind you on the lap. No behind you's on the lap. So we've got the first car starting the lap just at the control on now. That's Scotty.
Pretty good lap. That was a pretty wild lap. It was battling to get it stopped at turn 4. And he did. And then you can see the amount of oversteer he had. That was running wide there for Reynolds. Couldn't quite make the apex at turn 4. So as you said, just under 2 minutes now remaining. This is practice 2, but it's effectively qualifying 0. The top 10 cars go straight through to Q2. McLaughlin's just done the fastest first sector by a mile. That's 2/10 faster than anybody else all day. 23.4 on the first sector. So those new tyres are working for Scott. I reckon Mostert might be the one to watch. He's been very good here over the years. He keeps the rolling speed up. This is Scott exiting 5. That was probably a little bit wider than he would have liked, but it's still the fastest in sector 2. This is going to be an 8.6 or 7. Remember I said that?
Yeah. big lock-up and running wide in the final corner for Coulthard. As McLaughlin gets to the line, we'll see what the number looks like, and it's a pretty good one. It's an 8.8. Didn't get the massive jump in lap speed, but it's still marching forward. He lost a little bit of time to himself in the third sector, so he was about a tenth slower than his previous run in the final sector, as we find Todd Hazelwood on screen. He's 11th at the moment. So now with 40 seconds remaining, who's in, who's out? Waters is in at the moment. Hazelwood, if he improves on this lap, he gets into the top 10. Heimgartner's just outside, and so is Winterbottom. Hazelwood has just punched a 9-1. He's up into third. Well done. McLaughlin, Davison, Hazelwood, Van Gisbergen, Di Pasquale, Coulthard. Reynolds just squeaked into the 10. On the bubble, Holdsworth has come to the lane. And Lee in means Waters out. Jacobson got very close then in 12th position.
Fantastic job, Todd Hazelwood. The fastest Triple Eight car again. That hasn't been the first time this year. It happened in Adelaide, it happened in Townsville. And that young man is currently third in a field of superstars. Chaz Mostert goes up now into third. So he was the fastest, just looking, actually he wasn't. He was a couple of tenths away overall, but the reality around his mid-sector was almost the same as McLaughlin, and a couple of tenths away in sector one, but a nice lap by Chaz Mostert.
And we just saw Whincup cross the line there as well, so he didn't improve, but he stayed in 8th, so he's managed to make it in. Looking over the shoulder of Will Davison, currently in 2nd position, and that number was very good for him on that lap. He did a 1 minute 9.03, only a very, very tiny fraction slower than his peak lap, which was an 8.9. Heimgartner completing his lap out of the final corner. He's currently sitting in 13th position.
What can Andre do? We've been talking him up in terms of his braking ability. He comes up one spot, only to 12th, so he doesn't make it into the 10. So Holdsworth is the man on the cusp. He's currently 10th. And he's been able to get away with it. Nice job. Where did Anton just finish? He's in 6th, so he's actually up on David Reynolds. So very good job by young Anton Di Pasquale.
Considering it's only in the main game, his second BCS appearance this weekend. And so Ludo in conversation here with Scott McLaughlin. So that's an important and impressive start to the weekend for him, capitalising on the work they did in testing here last week. So an 8.8 for him, a 0.1 margin over Will Davison, and then Chaz Mostert is right behind him. So not a very big gap at all between the Shell V-Power Racing Team cars and the Tickford cars headed by Will Davison. So that's the confirmation on screen. How's the split? 0.4 of a second, a little over it. Covers the top 10 cars, and then those that'll be frustrated to have missed out. Cam Waters, who was on the pole the last time that we raced on Sunday, grabbed the Armour All pole in Townsville. Heimgartner, Jacobson, Winterbottom, they'll all be pretty frustrated by the process that you only needed a tiny fraction of lap speed and able you to get into the top 10.
Well, Scott McLaughlin, we'll just grab and butt in again as we always do, mate. Great way to finish. I'm not pointing at you today, this afternoon. Great way to finish the day. Yeah. Although I was quickly, Ludo was he was a little disappointed there though with your lap.
He gets angry at me. Like,
he does. He doesn't remember the past very well, does he?
No. Look, that's the reason why this team is so good, and we go well is because we've got a guy like that wants better and more and more and more. So. Yeah, it sounds like I got to go to the office and have a big think about it. So yeah.
Get a room of mirrors, mate. Take a look at yourself. New practice record though too. So she's pretty pacey out there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really good. It's overall feeling really nice. We worked obviously Park Ferme tomorrow after quali, so you got to think about that for the race. So worked a bit on having a fast car, but hopefully looking after its rear tyres. So we'll see how we go. A little bit there though that could have been a bit faster. Just from your point of view, sitting in that car, how did you see it? It's hard. This format makes you want to try and get this lap in just so you get through. So I was probably a little bit safe on my end. So there's probably a bit of a rest factor and a few things that I could probably push the barrow a bit more. But overall, pretty solid day. I got one out of 3 sectors right, I think. So I'll just try and get 3 tomorrow.
Good on you, mate. Well done. We'll go and grab Fabian quickly. Fabs, evaluate your day for us, please.
I'm not overly happy. Can you tell?
Yep, I can.
We tested here last week. Come here with a car that's very similar, and it feels like I'm driving a different car. So it's tough. It's a little bit frustrating, but we've got overnight to look at a few things, but yeah.
Through to the second phase of qualifying straight up, which obviously is something that is a good achievement itself. But compared to last week, those days that have passed, what's it not doing that you liked on last week?
I turn the steering wheel and it doesn't do anything. So I'm just sailing past apexes. I feel like it's my first day.
First day as a race car driver. Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Todd Hazelwood, a pretty happy man, and that's an excellent result for practice.
Yeah, great way to start a Friday, and fastest Holden and fastest Triple Eight car. So yeah, really proud of the whole team at Matt Stone Racing and IC Communications. They've done a ripping job. We had a great test day last week, and obviously off the back of Townsville as well, we've got some really good momentum on our side.
Do you think it was about 2 years ago this weekend that you debuted with Matt Stone Racing as an official supercar team? You've come a long way. Yeah,
we certainly have, and it feels like yesterday, honestly, that when that all happened, and yeah, it's amazing to see how far we've all grown as a team together, and yeah, really proud of everyone's efforts, you know, both obviously at the workshop and here today. So yeah, hopefully this sets up a really nice weekend for us.
All the best.
Cheers, thank you very much.
Chaz Mostert, you finished practice 1 in position 5 and then practice 2 in position 3 there. Pretty solid Friday.
Yeah, I didn't expect to be up there. That's I don't know if the track's degraded a little bit this year or something like that, but yeah, just struggling with the feel of the car out there. So pretty happy to be P3 and feel like we've still got a fair bit to chase, but yeah, we're still pushing on in our direction. I don't know if it's the right one or the wrong one, but yeah, just good to make it through to Q2.
A lot of chat about either understeer or oversteer. Which one of those two issues have you got, or a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. If you've got one, you generally put an input into the car to create another. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to do to try and to even the car out and make it a little bit stronger for tomorrow.
You look a little deflated. I don't know, when you were talking to Adam there, it looked like a very serious conversation for a guy that finished 3rd.
Yeah, look, it is. I guess it's one of those things, we put a bit of pressure on ourselves coming to QO. I've had pretty good form over the years here, and yeah, just hasn't rolled out as strong as what I'd like to. So yeah, putting the pressure on the internals here. I'd love to get a couple of trophies this weekend. Seemed to go all right at this place, but the car's just got to give me a bit more feedback for now.
Thanks, Chaz. Always good to chat with you, mate. I'm going to wander over this side here and pick up your teammate Lee Holdsworth. Sat on the bubble there at the end there, mate, in position 10, but made it through. What are the complaints that you've got to go forward for tomorrow?
Yeah, it didn't really hook up on the green, but felt like our car on an old tyre was quite good, but yeah, just didn't get the balance right for the green, and then caught up the train at the end of my lap, and there were like 5 cars that I was trying to negotiate track position with coming into the final corner, so that cost me a bit. I'm surprised we made it in, so I'm actually pretty satisfied that we made it in. We know we can be quicker than that, and we've got a couple of quick teammates that we can look at their data as well.
Always good to chat. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers.
Scott Pipe, 15th on the list. Going to do it the hard way tomorrow. Got another practice session in the morning, though. Give us the rundown on Friday at Ipswich.
You told me to give you something wise before this interview, and I got nothing. Weather was nice. I'm from Melbourne now, so I appreciate this day in Queensland. It's beautiful. I've had a good time. On-track stuff, not so fun, but it's so frustrating. You know, we're working so hard. It's not like to come 15th you work any less. Like, everyone's digging deep and trying hard, but it's just not there at the moment. Like 19th for JC as well. It's just we're pushing, but it's not good enough.
You guys have spoken a lot to us when we've asked questions about this, you know, putting a new Dunlop tyre on these cars and just not being able to feel. Is that still the case? The car's still not reacting to what you want and you're not able to feel that tyre on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, we ran green tyres at the end of that, and we'd done the whole session on a set that I finished the first session on, and I gained 0.04 of a second, I think it was, from, I think Watt had done 5 runs or 6 runs from another track as well, from Townsville. So to gain a 0.5 tenth on green tyres is obviously not good, but yeah, hopefully we've got one more session. I don't know, we'll try and tune it up.